one issue that's on everybody's minds: the crime in Baltimore City. Obviously, the root causes of crime need to be addressed as well, in terms of education, in terms of job access, in terms of access to opportunity for public health, and for transportation as well. But right now, crime is what is on everyone's mind. We're in a city where we have almost 400 murders a year. People sit at the red light wondering whether they're going to be the next victim of a carjacking or not. And there is no other person in either party that is running for governor right now who has a scintilla of a background in criminal justice. By way of my background, I was a federal prosecutor for 6 years, doing mostly homicide cases. I was the state's attorney in Montgomery County for 8 years and personally tried some of the most outrageous and egregious cases we've had in the state of Maryland. And then I was your attorney general for 8 years, where I also argued criminal cases in front of our appellate courts, including a case in front of the United States Supreme Court against a sex offender in Western Maryland, which we won unanimously and kept him in jail. So going forward, we want to make sure that we actually have somebody who understands the problem, wants to be laser focused on solving the problem, is going to get in there every day, rolling up his sleeves in this case, along with my Lieutenant Governor Candace Hollingsworth, and making sure we solve these problems. So in particular, what we're going to do is put 1,000 more police officers on the streets in our state. They're going to be well trained, they're going to be well paid, they're going to have de-escalation techniques. We're going to, along with the 1,000 new police officers, we're going to put 10,000 street lights in Baltimore City to light up the city, to make sure that crime does not happen in dark places. We're going to reestablish the Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission here in Baltimore City that was disbanded under this administration. We're going to implement community prosecution, which is prosecuted by neighborhood instead of by crime arbitrarily. So working with the community police, we're going to have the community prosecutors. I fully implemented this in Montgomery County as the first state's attorney to do that in the United States. I got the idea, of course, from Eric Holder when I was an assistant United States attorney. We put too many people in jail for nonviolent crimes, so we're going to have meaningful drug courts in Baltimore City and in all 24 jurisdictions in Maryland. I started the first drug courts in Maryland's history, and we're going to bring that to each and every county. I started the first domestic violence courts in Maryland's history, and we're going to bring domestic violence courts to Baltimore City and to the entire state. All 24 regions are going to have domestic violence courts. I started the first Family Justice Center in Maryland's history, now in Rockville, wraparound services for families that are victims of crime, and to make sure that we address those issues as well. So those are some of the components of what we're going to do. A couple sort of more of the minutia that people don't understand, but if you've been in the criminal justice business for years, as I have, you understand the importance of these aspects as well. We want to clear up stale warrants, back warrants. We cleared up tens of thousands of those in Montgomery County, which allowed law enforcement to focus on warrants that were fresh, new, and bringing in violent offenders. We want to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Eric Barron is a very close friend. I've worked with him for a long time. His first assistant, Phil Selden, I've known forever, since he was a little boy. We want to make sure that we take all gun cases, anybody who's a convicted felon who is involved in a commission of a crime, a violent crime with a gun, those cases should go to federal court where there's a mandatory minimum of 5 years for those offenses. We've tried that in the past, it worked in the past. We need to do it again. Project Exile, many of you might have remembered. We want to make sure we have gang units. I started the first gang unit in Maryland's history. We want to make sure we have those throughout the state. And something that we call papering, which is having prosecutors involved at the front end of cases. So when they come in, when a case comes in, the police bring it to a prosecutor before it goes to a court, and you can divert cases that should not be in the court system in the first place into diversion programs, but making sure you're working with the police to get evidence and gather evidence that needs to be gotten right away. So those are some of the major components of what we're going to do in our Safe Maryland plan. Really excited about doing it. Obviously, we're uniquely qualified to do it. Baltimore City needs us to do it. We're the only campaign, the only ticket that has the executive experience in the primary on the Democratic side, where both people on the ticket have executive experience and have worked in fighting crime in their jurisdiction. So it's something that I know. This is not something where you put somebody that does not have a background in criminal justice and hope that they can figure it out along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to my Lieutenant Governor, Candace Hollingsworth, who spent 4 years on the Hyattsville Council before becoming before becoming mayor of Hyattsville for 6 years. When George Floyd was murdered, she left that position to found an organization called Our Black Party, which has over 20,000 members nationally, and is focused on the betterment of Black Americans, and in this case, really Black Marylanders, on issues such as criminal justice. So with that, I'll turn it over to Candace.
Thank you, Doug, and good morning to everyone that is here. Thank you for being here for such an important announcement from our campaign. My name is Candace Hollingsworth. I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, running alongside the formidable Doug Gansler, who's the former Attorney General for the state of Maryland. We are running to bring our combined nearly 33 years of public service experience to build a Maryland that is safer, stronger, and more just. And I'm excited about partnering with Doug, not just because he knows how to address crime, but because he knows that the main ingredient to building a safe community is by investing deeply and equitably in the things those communities need. Resources like jobs, housing, transportation, education, and a strong local economy. Baltimore is a jewel in Maryland's crown, and we have to treat it like the jewel that it is. And unfortunately, for too many years, Baltimore and its people have been neglected. And it is time for Baltimore to have partners in the State House who understand the importance and the richness of Baltimore's history, the cultural richness of its communities, and are committed to making sure that maintains as it builds a safer environment. We know that the solutions of the 90s did not work to address public safety. What we are proposing is a radically different alternative, where the two of us are focused on building safe communities with an attention to justice. We've seen far too long that communities that are built safe usually means that those who are living there can no longer afford to live there. But when we talk about making Maryland safer, when we talk about making Baltimore safer, we're talking about making Baltimore safer for Baltimoreans, so that every day people can be proud to live in the city of Baltimore. The reality is that every year, this year in particular, Baltimore is approaching 400 murders this year. And that's not just counting the lives lost from murders. It's counting the lives that are impacted by those murders, their families. And that's not counting assaults and carjackings. We deserve better. Families deserve to be safe in their communities. We also deserve to be safe from those who are charged with protecting us. I'm not here to speak for Baltimore, but I can tell you I'll speak up for Baltimore. And Doug and I will make sure that we speak up for Baltimore as we are partners to make sure that this city is a place that people can be proud to call home and can live with pride and can live with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. And I too, the next person I'm going to announce is somebody who obviously cares about Baltimore as well. I was an Orioles season ticket holder back in 1989. I've been coming to Baltimore my whole life. I worked 2 blocks away from here for 8 years as the Attorney General. I started an inner city lacrosse league here in Baltimore City called Charm City Youth Lacrosse about 12, 13 years ago. We have 500 to 600 kids coming down. And that's another way. Some of these programs are getting people out away from a life of crime is going to be important. I wanted to just also mention 3 other aspects of our safe Baltimore plan that I neglected to mention up front. One is SROs. We need to have SROs in every school. And because we pipeline too many people into criminal justice, and SROs can help obviously prevent school shootings, but as well as other crimes that are going on in schools. A second is make sure that there's mental health professionals available for all first responders, so because of what they go through, and particularly now because they're so understaffed and underserved. And the last is something I did when I was state's attorney in Montgomery County that we're going to do throughout the state of Maryland, which is to put every police shooting in front of a grand jury. So every time a police officer shoots his or her gun, that's going to go before a grand jury to determine whether or not that was an appropriate use of force or not. Because those are the 23 members of the committee will make those decisions. So the next person to take the mic is somebody who obviously also cares deeply about crime in Baltimore, so much so that he's running to be the state's attorney here. I personally have put a high premium on smart people in government. I think that's an asset, and the resume that Theroux has is unparalleled. And obviously he went to Yale, as did I, and we were trying to make sure that more people go to Yale and fewer people go to jail. And so with Theroux here, was at Harvard Law School, was a prosecutor in the federal system, a system that works, and is going. I'm excited to be here, and the reason why we're both here today is because we both care deeply about addressing the crime situation, crime problem in Baltimore. We both have the same concern, which is to make sure we drive crime down while bringing justice up. So with that, Theroux Maraja.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful to Candace and to Doug for inviting me to this important conversation. If you are running for governor and you are not talking about crime in Baltimore, you do not appreciate the magnitude of the task before you. I'm so grateful that the former Attorney General and a current gubernatorial candidate has put crime in Baltimore front and center. Not because I want that to be the top agenda item for the governor, but because it has to be. This city is in crisis. It's been in crisis for years. And if we think we can do it alone, if we think we can do it without fresh ideas, without additional resources, without partnerships with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the governor's office, you're not paying attention. You're not realizing that we have tried to pretend like things are under control here in Baltimore for years. They're not. Our murder rate is out of control. Our carjackings, our burglaries, our robberies are also setting records for the nation. The last 30 days, there have been 24 homicides, 45 shootings, and 50 carjackings in just the last 30 days. That, of course, has been the trend line, not just for 2022, but for the last 8 years. I'm so encouraged to hear someone with Mr. Gansler's background, with his expertise in crime, making this issue front and center. The only way we're going to start addressing crime in Baltimore is if everybody believes it is their top problem. It would be easy for a gubernatorial candidate to say, oh, I've got other things to address. Because if you make crime part of your agenda, it becomes part of your problem to solve. That is what leaders have to do. They have to step up and say, this is my problem too. I think everyone knows that I don't particularly care about partisan lines. I am grateful that Governor Hogan has been talking about crime. I am especially grateful that this issue, crime in Baltimore, has become front and center in the governor's race, and I want all of you to take some time to read this plan. It makes a tremendous contribution to the conversation. There are some aspects in particular that are vital if we're going to solve this problem. You know, Doug talked a minute ago about this model that he learned from Eric Holder, this idea of community prosecution. It's a catchphrase to many. I've used it. I've said, look, you got to match community policing with community prosecution, but it's more than that. It's the idea that prosecutors will be connected to a community to think about the priorities that are vital for that community. Because the reality is that the challenges in Cherry Hill are very different than the challenges in Federal Hill. The level of mistrust in one neighborhood is quite different than the level of mistrust in another. And the notion that you can have a broad sledgehammer approach to crime in Baltimore is not only fatally flawed, it's been proven wrong. No one here is calling for a return to the days of zero tolerance or mass incarceration. No one here thinks that the draconian policies of the 1980s that got us in this mess need to be recycled and replicated. Shame on anyone who thinks that's what this crisis demands. There's a lot of nuance to a plan that says we need to both reflect on the need for real enforcement, for real partnership, for real prosecution, but also reflect on the need for reentry services and diversion services and investments in our schools. That's the kind of nuanced approach that a governor ought to bring to this profound problem. It is the defining challenge of our day. With all due respect to all of the challenges that the next governor will face, there is no problem more pressing than violent crime in Baltimore. It is what people know about the jewel city of the state of Maryland. It is what prevents the region from really becoming the place that it could be. It deters investment. It discourages homeowners from raising their families here. It may help Howard County and Baltimore County to have people flee the city, to have investment flee the city. But a governor that cares about this city has to care about Baltimore. And if you care about Baltimore, you have to be talking about crime. I'm so grateful for the invitation. I'm so grateful for the thoughtful perspective that you guys have brought on this defining challenge.
Thank you, Theroux. And I want to acknowledge Pastor Gwynn is here from the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, who is Georgetown candidacy, because he and the people that are in his pews and the pews of other pastors deserve to live in a city that's safe like everybody else gets to live in. And Baltimore is just a beautiful, wonderful city that has not realized its promise and cannot realize its promise until we make Baltimore safe. And so it's a pretty binary choice. If you want to eradicate crime, if you want to make Baltimore safe, if you want to solve the murders that are outstanding, only 41% are solved now, we ask for your support. If you are satisfied with 400 murders a year, being the person that's sitting at the red light, wondering whether you're the next carjacking victim, you should probably consider voting for somebody else.